Hello, today is Monday, November 22nd, 2021. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Back in June, we recorded a podcast on POTS lines, plain old telephone service, and the use of aggregators to help minimize the monthly cost of those types of lines. Today, we are going to talk more about local services and what's been happening in the marketplace since June. To do that, I'm joined by my fellow TC2 director, Pat Gilpatrick. Pat has a ton of experience and knowledge about local services. Well, actually, Pat has tons of knowledge about ICT in general. So we'll look at what the ILECs are doing to drive you away from buying many types of legacy services. Pat has done quite a lot of work recently in the ILEC space with her clients, so I'm really pleased that she has agreed to share her insights. Hello, Pat, and welcome to the podcast. So why don't you give a quick overview of ILEC services and the issues that you are seeing?
Hi, Joe. It's great to be back with you on Staying Connected. The ILEC, or incumbent local exchange carrier services, fall into several different categories for most enterprise customers. There are POTS lines that you mentioned, or measured business lines, but there are also things like BRIs, basic rate interface lines, FX, foreign exchange lines, PBX trunks, T1, T3 access circuits, primary rate interface lines, and analog or voice grade point-to-point private lines. We find that most of the clients we work with still have a collection of these legacy services, which may be in the ground for decades. The problem is that they're all riding over that grandfathered infrastructure of old copper wiring using time division multiplexing, or TDM technology, which the ILECs and the CLECs, the competitive local exchange carriers, are all very keen on retiring. As a matter of fact, these LECs have been petitioning the FCC for the authority to turn these services off for years, and the FCC granted relief from regulatory pricing rules for them back in July of 2019. So that ruling did away with regulatory price caps on TDM services so that those suppliers could charge more to cover the expenses of maintaining all that old copper infrastructure.
Gosh, I must be old if those services are now considered legacy. Those were the go-to services for so many companies over the years. So what has happened in the marketplace since the pricing rules were relaxed?
Well, it's initiated what's become a very predictable trend of very significant price increases on all TDM-based services. This year, the ILEC local service price increases have been excessive. No other way to put it. AT&T raised their list rates for a POTS line from $279 to $419 in mid-March for the Southeast region. Then in September, effective September 1st, that rate went up again to $629 a month. So that's a whopping 225% increase within 6 months this year. For customers who are not under any kind of ILEC contract, like an AT&T Easy Rate, or who aren't buying their services through an aggregator or through a master discount agreement of some kind, which provides a fixed discount off of those service guide list rates, they're likely seeing huge increases on their ILEC service invoices. And of course, to add insult to injury, all these service types are associated at the full level of USF regulatory fee assessment, which this quarter is 29.1%, plus a myriad of local and state taxes. So it has a compounding negative cost impact.
Wow, Pat, that is a huge increase for business customers. And frankly, many of our clients do still need some of those services. Have other services been affected?
Oh, yes. Not just POTS lines are affected. I have a client who has voice grade private lines whose rates went up over 300% between February and September of this year. And any clients who have BRIs still in the ground will have experienced similar price increases. BRIs are those 128 kilobit lines that was historically muxed together to connect your Polycom or your Tandberg video equipment or your fax machines. And in the region where my client had BRIs, they were costing between $2,500 and $6,000 each. And if mileage was involved, either for a BRI or for a private line, the impact was the most severe.
So what's a business customer supposed to do to combat this pricing environment?
Well, first, they need to conduct some due diligence on their local service accounts and then put a plan in place to migrate those, or at a very minimum, move them to some kind of contracted rate within their own agreement or through an aggregator. That said, in some cases, we're seeing carriers refuse to renew or extend contracts for some services like old PRIs. So there's really no alternative other than a migration plan to SIP trunking or Ethernet technology. But understanding what local services you're actually buying is critical. ILEC local service accounts all resemble either a 10 or 13-digit telephone number. Sometimes if it's a consolidated or summary account, there could be a letter in the account number as well, but it still resembles a telephone number. Typically, these local service bills might say, your monthly charge is X with no detail. So it's really difficult to determine what inventory is actually rolling up to that cost. You just notice that it's a compounding, every few months it's getting a lot higher. In that case, clients need to ask for a copy of their CSR or customer service record for every account, which will detail the various services or individual monthly charges. It'll provide the individual USOC codes, which stand for Universal Service Order Code, and that USOC level detail is what you need to determine what you're actually paying for in detail.
So the FCC is now moving toward granting the ability for suppliers to sunset these services and turn them off. What alternatives do clients have if there is a termination date published in the future?
Well, some aggregators are claiming they've been able to extend those wholesale agreements with carriers through 2024, 2025. And that might be great for pricing, but it won't help if the underlying service is grandfathered or retired. The most important thing to do is identify those most vulnerable local services you're still paying for, like a PRI or a POTS line or a voice grade private line, and proactively manage a transition plan to move away from them. The cost avoidance will be very important, as will the operational migration. In some cases that we've managed, the services, once they were identified and tested, were determined to be inactive. They were so old, the equipment behind them had been removed, but not the service. So it was a painless way to decommission them and reduce cost. If they're still active, there are plenty of new technologies between IP and wireless and SIP trunking that they can move to. For large customers that are still using TDM-based speeds for access, like to their MPLS network or to their dedicated internet access ports, the T1s, the N by Ts, the T45 type speeds, be aware that renewals of those TDM-based access circuits will come with some escalating recurring charges. Gone are the days of those flat rate US T1s for between $140, $180 a month based on your geographical footprint and the total quantity that you're buying. Those rates are going to escalate every 6 to 12 months with any renewal and could be 2 to 5 times the current rates. And that'll further incentivize clients to migrate to Ethernet wherever possible.
Pat, as we mentioned on a previous podcast, this isn't just a U.S. phenomenon. I mean, I have clients that have sites outside of the U.S., and certain PTTs just flat out say that ISDN is being eliminated. So gone is gone, I guess. So you better have a plan. Okay, Pat, any closing thoughts?
Yep. Analyze your local billing. Make sure you understand your contractual positions for those local services that are still in place. There are various local service reports that you can request from your vendor account teams and get that USOC level detail that I mentioned earlier. Staying on top of that spend and understanding these changes that are happening will prevent even bigger cost surprises in the future. Be proactive. That's the best key to this issue.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you, Pat. Now, as you just heard, ILEC local costs are continuing to increase, so you better have a plan for dealing with it. If you would like to talk to Pat, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues about your ILEC services, please give us a call or drop us an email. And you can stay up to date by subscribing to these Staying Connected podcasts, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.